Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We are going to be discussing a new study, very interesting study that seems to correlate antibiotic use with colon cancer. We're going to be joined in a moment by Dr. Sophia Harlid from Norway, and we will get into that in just a minute. Before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. What started out to be an alternative to a Pop-Tart has become so much more. The Tasty Pastry will make you think you're actually eating real cake. And you'll eat them because they taste great and not just because they're good for you. 20 grams of protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, a multitude of flavors. And if you want to buy them, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. If you want some freebies, listen during the commercial break. For the secret word, email it to onair@superhumanradio.net. Make sure you include your mailing address, and we will send you a box of goodies. And people are getting these boxes of goodies, and they are blown away by the generosity of Ron Penna and all the goodies that they get. It's more than just Tasty Pastry. They're getting the flavored almonds, the flavored nut butters, and everything. So it's really a great opportunity. You don't have to win anything, just listen for the secret word and email it to onair@superhumanradio.net with your mailing address. If you don't put your mailing address in, nobody's going to take time to email you back and say, what's your mailing address? And I also realize that you can't follow instructions then. So please do it. And now, without further delay, let me bring my guest on and open up the microphone. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sophia Harlid.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Important discussion. And I want to go on the record of saying something before we do this show. People should not freak out by this information. This is a corollary type. This is almost, I guess you would call this epidemiological, the way you took a database and extrapolated this data. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who have had antibiotics and may not develop or will not develop colon cancer, but we have to learn more about it. You are with, I'm going to try to pronounce this. You are with the University of Umeå?
Umeå, yes, in Sweden, actually, not Norway.
I'm sorry. Oh my God.
But that's okay.
Don't hit me when you meet me. So in Sweden, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. And what made your group look at this? Why was this study necessary? What preceded it that this was the next logical paper to publish?
Well, so first I have to say we can't really get credit for this idea because this has been out there for some time, that antibiotics might be associated with colon or colorectal cancer. So when we started to think about this study, that was years ago, like around 2017, there were a few studies out there already where they had tried to look at this in different ways, but they were quite small. So it was hard to draw any conclusions. And then, so one thing is in Sweden, we have a lot of registry information on all citizens. And in 2005, they started the pharmaceutical register, which we used in the study. So within that register, every prescribed medication is recorded. So you can extract this information and then you get, for every person when they got, what kind of prescribed medication they got, when they got it, the dose, everything. So it was really a great opportunity to use that register, but we had to know that we had enough data. So that's why we started to think about this in 2017, because then we knew that we would have at least 10 years of follow-up data. So that was actually, this not very exciting, but that was the reason why we decided to do the study. So within our group, we're very interested in risk factors for cancer, especially modifiable risk factors. So things that you can actually change to reduce the cancer incidence in the population. And a lot of things about colon cancer and colorectal cancer, we already know that it's very connected to lifestyle more than many other forms of cancer. So for example, your diet is associated, consumption of red meat, processed meat, for example, low consumption of fiber and low consumption of fruits and vegetables are also quite strongly associated when you try to find risk factors. So then this has sort of led people to think that the microbiome likely is involved. And we also, before this, already knew that the microbiome is different. If we look at the microbiome in a person who has colon cancer compared to a person who is healthy, they will differ. But it's hard to say, and it's still, we don't really know, is it because the microbiome promotes development of the tumor, or is it because the start of the tumor development attracts specific bacteria? So we can't really say like what comes first here.
But I think we can safely say from lots of good research that's emerging about the microbiome, that there are two correlates that seem to stick together. The microbiome of the type 2 diabetic and the propensity of type 2 diabetics to develop cancers. There seems to be a lot of good research out there that I'm going to mispronounce these because I'm not a scientist, but there's Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes are two different phyla, and they're associated with, one is associated with poor absorption of nutrition and increased energy expenditure, which makes people lean, or propensity to be lean. And the other one is associated with better extraction of nutrition from the food and a reduction in energy expenditure, which makes people more obese. And the latter one seems to be associated with those who suffer from type 2 diabetes. Are you familiar with this phenomenon?
I couldn't answer any detailed questions about it, but yes.
Okay. So you had 40,000 subjects in your study. Is that correct?
Yes. Or we had 40,000 individuals who had developed colorectal cancer, so 40,000 cases. And then we had 200,000 controls. So,
oh, wow. That's very impressive. And so when you started to look at the data, how closely was antibiotic use correlated with the the propensity of colon cancer?
What do you mean with closely?
So how this, it was statistically significant, but how significant were the statistics that the people who developed colon cancer had taken antibiotics within 5 years or 10 years, I think, of the development of the cancer?
I mean, I think it's difficult to. So what we can say is that there was a higher, like the people who got colorectal cancer, they had used in general more antibiotics than the people who didn't get it. But of course, those that didn't get it also had used antibiotics. If we just looked at the numbers, I'd say there were maybe a 2% difference. So the individuals in our study are fairly old. So colorectal cancer is also a disease that usually strikes you when you're 60 or above. So if I remember correctly, the mean age in our study is 72 years. And so this age group actually gets prescribed quite a lot of antibiotics. I think the individuals, the cases, about 20% of them had received antibiotics. So not all of them.
Right.
And among the controls, it would be around 18%, if I remember correctly. So there's like a 2% difference there. So it's small differences. So
Uh-oh. We lost our connection
at all.
Internet
And
is-
most people who take antibiotics, of course, will not.
Yeah, develop,
it.
and that's where
Yeah.
the confounding things occur, right? So what else do this group do or not do lifestyle wise that antibiotics seems to maybe add a little fuel to the fire?
Yes, that is possible. That's what's happening.
Did you check? Or did you know the status of insulin resistance in the individuals who got antibiotics and developed colon cancer?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, it would have been great to know, but because this was a study based on registry data, we're very limited in the amount of data that we have. So, I mean, we would have loved to have, especially data on their diet, for example, and also their physical activity, their exercise, their better data on family history and so on. But we did not have access to most of those things.
Right. And another thing that contributes highly to colorectal cancer seems to be sleep hygiene and sleep habits. People who tend to stay up late at night. We know we talked about a study a few years ago that showed shift workers, those who work nighttime.
Yeah, a lot of different cancers are associated with shift work. It seems to be like disrupting something.
Now, I wouldn't imagine that there were any types of microbiome testing going on these individuals where we could say they had a higher number of these microbes or a lower number of those microbes. But is there any research out there that shows microbiota diversity and risk of colon cancer?
I mean, there are, but nothing like where we have really looked at antibiotics and like all of these things together. One of the things, I mean, we are hoping to look a little bit more closely at actually the microbiome in individuals who have taken antibiotics versus people who haven't. But one problem with that is that, so for the association that we found in our study, we found that it increased the risk of colon cancer that was in the right side of the colon. So that's the part that's like most close to your small intestine, so furthest up in your colon.
Isn't that the ascending or descending?
The ascending, yes,
ascending,
the ascending colon. So right, like the first part of the large intestine. Now the problem is when you try to look at people's microbiome, usually you use fecal samples and you extract bacteria from there, but then you get the microbiome that's in the other end of the colon. So the microbiome will differ a lot depending on where, and it's like a continuum.
Right.
So if you want to do it like a really good study on this, then you would need to do a much more intrusive collection of microbiota, and that's of course much more difficult to get people to
because
participate in those studies.
You would have to scope them to gather those microbes. Yeah.
Yes. So there have been like some studies where they have, for example, found that the microbiome differs a lot. So that's been proven. You can do it like, for example, when you do a colonoscopy, you can also collect samples to look at the microbiome as well.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Now, there was also a group that was compared that received a non-antibiotic remedy or treatment for urinary tract infections, I think.
Yes.
And they didn't have the higher rate of colon cancer because it wasn't an antibiotic. Is that right?
No, it's antibacterial that you use to prevent the occurrence of urinary tract infections. So people can take it in a very regular basis. So individuals who get a lot of urinary tract infections, but this it's activated by the sour pH in the urine. So it's not at all active in the gastrointestinal tract and doesn't affect the microbiome at all.
And then what about the oh God, I'm reading there's a couple questions coming up from people in the audience. I was reading one and it kind of distracted me. I shouldn't do that during the interview. One of the things I read in this study was the course of time that someone is given an antibiotic. And I never knew people were given antibiotics for 6 months or longer, but there was a threshold, right? That people who received longer duration treatment had a higher risk. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Now, a lot of the people we have classified as receiving antibiotics for 6 months or longer, that does not mean that they had it for 6 months in a row. But during all of the time, we have sort of grouped together all of their treatments. So if the cumulative exposure was more than 6 months, then they were in the highest group.
Okay.
And it definitely looked like individuals with there was a clear trend. So the more antibiotics a person had received, the higher was the risk.
What about the type of antibiotics, right? There's some antibiotics that are not very strong. There are some antibiotics that are so strong that they could cause all sorts of soft tissue damage and all sorts of other problems. Was there any correlation between the type of antibiotic and the risk of colon cancer?
Yes, I mean, we tried to look at this because we had very detailed data on antibiotic type. And we did find some differences, but I think it's hard to draw conclusions because one limitation of our study is still that there's quite short follow-up time. So 10 years is not a lot. Usually it takes you at least 10 years or more to even develop colorectal cancer. And previous studies, so there was one study published in 2019 where it was smaller, it was about half the size of ours, but they had longer follow-up time. And in that study, they saw the strongest effect for people who had used antibiotics like 20 years or longer before their cancer. And in some other studies, they have also tried to distinguish between the different antibiotic groups. And we found some associations with 3 specific types, but other studies have found with other types. So, for example, we did not find the strongest association with penicillins, but that has stood out in other studies. But I think one thing to remember here is that those individuals who have taken the most antibiotics, they usually have not been prescribed the same antibiotic every time.
Right, because one didn't work well, so they switched to
another.
Yes,
for example, or you have used it during a very long time period, 20 years, 30 years. So there have been very many different kinds. So because of this, it's hard, I think, to. We didn't see anything clear cut when we divided them. It was more like a general association across antibiotic types.
The population of Sweden, do they take probiotics, or do they get it from cultured dairy and stuff like that?
I think a lot of people try to take probiotics. I've had that question before, if that could sort of counteract this effect in some way. But I'm not sure about that. As far as I know, there's been no studies. And so since probiotics is sold over the counter here and in most countries, then you can't really it's more difficult to do a study on it.
Right.
So that's one advantage of our studies, that antibiotics is quite heavily regulated here. So we know that people you can't just go to a pharmacy and buy it, but you have to have it prescribed.
Right. Was there evidence of when an antibiotic is prescribed for this reason versus this reason, was there a higher risk factor? So in other words, let's say people were getting antibiotics for gut issues versus an infection in their foot. Was there any evidence that the target of the antibiotic therapy correlated with the risk factor?
That's a really interesting question, and we thought about trying to look at that, but we haven't yet.
Okay.
So I can't really give a good answer, but
there is an herbicide used abundantly here in the United States, made by a company called Monsanto, called glyphosate or Roundup. And it has antibiotic-like qualities. In fact, Monsanto patented the combination of glyphosate and amoxicillin for use in humans as a new double shot antibiotic for certain types of infections. It has not gone to market yet, but they have the patent on it. And it's now understood that everything in the United States has trace amounts of glyphosate in it, and in other countries too. Germany published a wonderful study about 5 years ago or 6 years ago that mothers in the town, I may be wrong, of Munster, which is far away from the rural area, had trace amounts of glyphosate in breast milk. So they're not farmers. They live in the city. They never go to the farmland, but it's found in their breast milk. Glyphosate has antibiotic-like qualities, and it's if you're getting if you're getting it in your bread and in your milk and in this, you're getting lots of it day in and day out. And it's now in the United States being identified for the development of certain cancers. But more importantly, lots of people have digestive issues here because the microbiome has been just so perturbed by the constant intake of this chemical. Do they have glyphosate in Sweden?
I mean, I would assume that it's basically spread everywhere, so it's hard to draw any boundaries on it. So I'm sure it's circulating here as well.
So ubiquitous, it's hard to trace. It's really really a sad situation. What that company has done to this planet with the introduction of that herbicide. But so does your country watch glyphosate and cancer at all?
I have to say I don't follow exactly that, so I can't answer that. But I know there are people that are interested in those different kinds of
because it'd be interesting to see that when you add glyphosate into the life, since glyphosate is part of the lifestyle, right? The diet lifestyle. It would be interesting to see if there's a connection between not just the higher antibiotic use, but the higher intake of glyphosate, where this person appears to be on an antibiotic every day of their lives for 20 years. That would be an interesting thing to look at. How you could control, I don't know how you could actually acquire that information. You'd have to first start looking at the common Swedish diet. You'd have to start gathering product at store shelves. You'd have to start testing all these products for glyphosate. You'd have to come up with an average glyphosate load per day per person. It would be very, very hard to do. But
I don't know if there's some kind of biomarker you could use, so you could test samples to see what the levels would be in an individual. Would probably be the easiest.
There are companies here in the United States that now sell tests to average people if you want to find out what your glyphosate load is in your body. So you're right. You could test for the blood levels of the metabolite of glyphosate. That would be interesting discussion. What was what really popped out at you in this when you started to look at the data? Was there anything that you looked at and thought, gee, I didn't expect that?
When we first started to look at this and we had our first results, we weren't sure. So many of the first studies on this had not divided the colon up into different parts. So that's one of the things that we did. And then what we first found very interesting is this fact that it was very confined to the right part of the colon. So for the distal, the other side of the colon, we saw no association at all.
Interesting.
And also for the rectum, we did not see any association. Actually, in that part for women only, we saw a decreased risk. So there it seemed like antibiotics was having some kind of protective effect.
So we've done shows over the years that show that hormones affect microbial diversity. For instance, high estrogen levels, you see higher rates of certain microbes. High testosterone levels, we see higher rates of certain microbes. There is a microbe that is sold as a probiotic, but it's found in the gut. It's also found in human breast milk called L-reuteri. And higher levels of L-reuteri correlate with higher levels of oxytocin in humans. So we know there's a symbiotic relationship between sex hormones and some of these unique protein peptides, and they actually influence. I don't believe, a lot of people wanted to say, oh, take these these microbes, these probiotics, and you're going to raise your testosterone levels. No, I say the presence of testosterone, the presence of estrogen, the presence of a lot of these hormones influences which microbes thrive and which ones don't. With that being said, is there any evidence that there are gender-specific differences in the rates of colorectal cancer and antibiotic use based on hormonal milieus?
I mean, there are, so colorectal cancer is more common among men than women, that's quite interesting actually, because it's very consistent across all countries. So we know that that is not lifestyle specific, because lifestyle is more regional. So it has been a lot of speculation about this being due to hormonal differences, but still hard to pinpoint if that is the actual case. I think it's interesting because, for example, if you look at hormone replacement therapy in women, which has been connected to breast cancer risk a lot, for example, then it's actually very clear that women who take hormone replacement therapy, they have a reduced risk of colon or colorectal cancer. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are, but that's not as clear cut, but there are studies where they've seen.
I'm going to tell you why it's not clear cut. Because all of the pharmaceutical preparations of estrogen that are prescribed by doctors today either are methylated, which changes the landscape of the liver, increases inflammatory response, causes all sorts of problems with methylation, but also a lot of them come from equine. They gather equine estrogen and they give them to women, and they say, oh, it's just the same thing. I would love to see studies done based on bioidenticals versus these pharmaceutical products, which really women shouldn't be taking. But more importantly, estrogen is a powerful anti-inflammatory. Every cell has a receptor on it that estrogen docks in and produces what's known as a fibroblast activation factor response. So if you are in a car accident and you hit your head on the windshield, your brain immediately starts to aromatize androgens into estrogens to stop the swelling. So estrogen is powerful anti-inflammatory. I think that's why a lot of women don't get some of the same problems that men do, because they have the anti-inflammatory edge. They have higher estrogen levels. That's just my opinion of talking to doctors on this show and reading research. So that's something of interest too. We have to take a break. I'll let you comment on that on the other side of the break, okay? So just stick with me. We're going to take one quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us. You are watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
New Mass Pro SYNTHAGEN X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, SYNTHAGEN X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like SYNTHAGEN X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthagen.com. Mass Pro SYNTHAGEN. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Our lifestyle today is very different from what it's naturally supposed to be. The effects of this can be seen in the exponential increase in chronic pain in our population. So the question should be, how can we reprogram a body and how can we tap into the innate intelligence of our body? Tau Patch is a patented nanotechnology device that sends photons of coherent therapeutic light into specific points on your body. These photons are similar to the ones your cells use to communicate with each other. They stimulate your central nervous system and streamline its communication with the rest of the body. Get your Tau Patch today by visiting shrnetwork.biz/Tau Patch. That's TAOPATCH. And save 10% using code SHR. Bacteria. I need to share with you all a revolutionary new wearable technology called hapbee. Hapbee allows you to enjoy the effects of caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, melatonin, and muscle relaxants without actually ingesting anything. Yes, really. They figured out the unique magnetic signature of each of these molecules and recorded them. Just put the hapbee on, choose the signal you want, and it starts projecting the magnetic signature of that molecule that you choose, like coffee for feeling alert. Go to hapbee.com/SHR. That's HAPBEE.com/SHR to learn more and unlock an $80 discount exclusively for the Superhuman Radio listeners. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture raised, great tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code superhuman to save 10% off your entire first order. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/betterhelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Remember Tailor-Made Health? They had the chill pill, topical form of face cream that actually acted like Botox. So many great products. Well, they're back. They disappeared for a little while. They rebranded. The new company name is Infiniwell, INFINIWELL. And you can get a 20% discount off of everything at their website, shrnetwork.biz/bewell, BEWELL. All the same great products. The labels even have the same colors and look the same. Great products to raise growth hormone. Remember, this is tailor-made compounding pharmacies retail line. So they have some amazing products that you cannot get anywhere else. The new name of the company is Infiniwell. You'll start hearing more of their commercials. We'll have them back on the air very soon. Use the promo code SHR20 to save 20% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell. Welcome them back. We're happy to have them back. And now, bring my guest back on. We are talking today with Dr. Sophia Harlid, all the way from Sweden. And we have a question, and it's a good question. I'm going to bring it on right now. It comes from David Elliston. And I believe David lives in Australia. David says, hi, Sophia and Carl. I've read that children born by cesarean section do not get the same gut microbes as children born naturally. If this is accurate, will these individuals be more prone to colon cancer? Or more importantly, should this be a question asked when we are doing things that have anything to do with the microbiome?
I think that's an interesting question. I mean, there's been a lot of research into this, the microbiome of children born by C-section. And I think the more people look into it, the less clear that connection has become. And one thing that I think we should keep in mind is that if a child most children get antibiotics at one time, at least, when they grow up. And that will have a lot higher effect on the microbiome than the way they were born, because it takes still several years for, I mean, you sort of prime the microbiome at birth, but it's hard to say how much that actually plays in, because of it takes like so many years for the microbiome to fully develop during your early years.
I was a C-section baby, and I was a formula baby. I'm 63. When my mother had me, they were telling women, oh, breast milk is inferior to formula. You want formula. So I have a double whammy. I mean, because we know that children who get formula don't get a lot of the, so some of the microbes are conveyed to the child as they pass through the vaginal canal. But a lot more are conveyed to the child from the areola of the nipple, not just the breast milk itself, but about 60% of the microbes come from the baby suckling. And so this seeding, if you will, is probably there early on. But as you point out, as life goes on, you're exposed to other things, maybe antibiotics, maybe we know that diet can change microbial diversity in days. People who go from a normal diet to an elimination diet, like let's say carnivore, within days the microbial landscape changes, because if you're not feeding them, they spore. They don't die. This is many microbes don't die. They spore, they hide, they become dormant. When you start eating those foods again that they like, they go, oh, I'm going to wake up and eat again. It's very hard. And also another fact that I learned is the appendix, which we thought was this useless appendage on the intestines, actually keeps all the microbes, the different microbes that are in your gut in there. You can actually reseed the gut by getting those microbes to come back out of the appendix and become present again. The gut is so fascinating. We may never completely understand it, because we actually are hosts to these microbes. Microbes needed arms to pick and legs to move. They got inside us and we serve that purpose. We have this symbiotic relationship with them. They help us or hurt us. We help them or hurt them. It's very, very fascinating to me. Which leads me to the other question. I read one time that the microbes that are the easiest to kill tend to be the most beneficial. The microbes that are the most resistant to kill tend to be the pathogenic type, which would tell me that antibiotics probably kill a lot of the really good microbes we want to keep around, as opposed to the bad ones that seem to be more resistant and strong. Any opinion on that?
I mean, I think that might be an oversimplification, but definitely has some weight to it. So, because that's one of the things we think is happening in the gut when you get more prone to developing cancer, is that you just like remove a lot of the diversity and create the opportunity for some more pathogenic species to get a better hold and grow more.
The people who develop colon cancer, did they have any other disorders that seem to line up with the ones with the colon cancer at all?
Do you mean in our study or just in general?
In general, any studies that you've read, ulcers, any other disorders?
I mean, it is associated with, for example, more inflammatory disorders like metabolic disorders, as well as IBD. Is that the name?
Yes.
Yeah, inflammatory bowel disease.
Yeah, inflammatory bowel disease. Yeah. So it does correlate.
Definitely. I mean, it is also associated with type 2 diabetes. So those individuals have a higher risk of developing colorectal cancer as well.
Excuse me. I have allergies. I hope they don't correlate with colon cancer. How best to recover if previously used ABX? I don't know what ABX is.
I guess antibiotics.
Oh, okay. Is there anything we can do?
I mean, that's also a question I've gotten. I think not really. The best way to like stay on top of colorectal cancer is to attend screening, I'd say. That's the best you can do. I mean, in the US, they have screening programs already. In Sweden, they've been really slow on that. But you should like attend colonoscopy when you're called.
The only thing I would inject there is before having a colonoscopy, I would do like a Cologuard test, because Cologuard actually has the ability to detect cancer before polyps show up. Because a colonoscopy is invasive, it's expensive, and it comes with risks. I know lots of people who ended up with perforated colons and years of distress because of a routine colonoscopy. So me personally, I do a Cologuard every year. It's very easy if you're not squeamish about, sticking a little paddle in your poop and smearing it on a Wattman blotter and mailing it in, because it can actually detect the presence of cells as opposed to a visible polyp, which can be, if you don't have a polyp, they don't see anything. So I would say get a Cologuard every year if you're above 60 like me. And then if you have a detection, then you go for the colonoscopy and actually have someone look. That's just my opinion personally. That's all.
No, I agree. I mean, most programs also have a pre-screening where you use either Cologuard, some kind of fecal blood test or methylation test to try to determine if a person should go in for a full screening or not.
Right. What would you recommend for people who listen, who learn about this study, both clinicians and lay people? What would you tell them? Obviously, we don't want people running out and going, "Oh my God, I had antibiotics. I'm probably going to get colon cancer." So what would you tell them this study really shows?
I mean, I think that's the risk for the individual based only on antibiotics use is still very low. So if we think that your lifetime risk of getting colorectal cancer is, I think, around 4 to 5%. It differs a little bit where you live in the world and so on. And then that risk, so that's your, like the general full lifetime risk. That risk for what we saw in our study, those that had taken the most antibiotics, it was increased by 17%. So that's not a lot more. It would be like, say, if it was 4.5, then maybe it would be 4.8 instead. Right. So the risk increase for you as an individual if you took antibiotics is not very high. But I still think that it definitely has impact on a population level. And I think also we have to remember that the main reason still to reduce antibiotics prescriptions and intake is because of the risk of antibiotic resistance developing, which can cause really major problems.
We've done so many shows on antibiotics over the past 16 years. And more and more people are literally throwing their prescriptions away. They go to the doctor, they have this, whatever it is, and the doctor writes them a prescription for amoxicillin. And people don't even get it filled anymore. And I'm happy that we had that influence on them. Throw it away. I'm not saying die. If you have an infection, you take it. But doctors are too quick to prescribe antibiotics like candy.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall there has been the consciousness about these kinds of things has definitely been raised. And people are being more careful. But as you said, I mean, there are definitely instances where you need to take antibiotics, and you should definitely not be worried about that. I've taken antibiotics for infections when I needed to, and that's nothing that keeps me up at night at all. So
I take azithromycin once a year, a Z-Pak. Are you familiar with this antibiotic?
No.
So azithromycin was approved by the Food and Drug Administration as a senolytic. Azithromycin is a very, very weak antibiotic. However, it has this unique capacity to remove senescent cells from the body. Senescent cells are the cells that we develop as we age that create chronic inflammation. And so once a year, I take a Z-Pack just to clear out all the senescent cells. I do lots of things to control the development of senescent cells. I fast, I exercise rigorously and intensely. I observe proper sleep hygiene. I go to sleep at 9 o'clock. I get up at 5:30. So there's lots of things that you can do to keep the accumulation of senescent cells. But one thing you can do once a year as an assault on all of them is to take a Z-Pack. But again, it's a very weak antibiotic, very, very weak antibiotic. Should I be worried about that?
I couldn't comment on that specific antibiotic.
Okay. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, we have a question from Danny Geraldo Oquendo, all the way from Colombia. Stay tuned. You're listening to and watching Superhuman Radio. We shall return. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/Delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today. Bacteria. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off INSIDETRACKER to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the Superhuman Nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's DAN.KOPITZKE at superhumanradio.net to learn more. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking something now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We have one last question here before we sign off. Danny, who watches the show in Colombia, says, hello. Basically, what he's asking is there any probiotic that he could be taking to recover from 3 months of antibiotics? Do you use probiotics at all, Dr. Harlid?
Myself, no. I mean, I might do it if I took antibiotics, but I think one problem here is that it's hard to know what constitutes the perfect microbiome. And that can also be different for different individuals, of course, because it's also related to our genetic makeup and other more personal things. So because of that, it's like impossible to recommend one probiotic. I mean, they try to make them and market them for everyone, but I guess you just have to see what makes you feel better. And in the same way, it's impossible to say if taking a probiotic would in some way reduce the risk that's associated with the antibiotics or not.
And there's a lot of other things. So years ago, I was all about probiotics. I thought they were a great idea. And then I actually gave myself a gut problem by taking very high doses of probiotics. High doses of probiotics, given the right conditions, can lead to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You can end up with these microbes in your gut where you don't want them. And for a year, I dealt with this. I stopped. I don't take any probiotics now, unless it's in yogurt. You know, if I eat some yogurt, I don't take any. But I took probiotics for so long and such high doses. I'm talking about 1 trillion CFUs a day of a product called VSL number 3, that in the 1 trillion doses pharmaceutically, you have to get a prescription, but you can buy the 500 billion sachets over the counter. So I just took 2 every day. I thought, I'm smart. I'm going to fix this problem. And within about 2 years, I noticed I was always bloated. I was gassy. I was always farting. And I never had these problems before I took the probiotics. And so I stopped taking them. And it's taken me about 6 years to get back to normal. So probiotics probably work, but that's a double-edged sword, because something that really works, you have to be very cautious, because too much may not be too good. And if you look on Google Trends, you will see the lines for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and probiotics exactly side by side. And I think that people who take too many probiotics end up with problems, and there's still problems, maybe different than having a bad microbiome. They have a microbiome that is inappropriately overburdened by one type of microbe or another. Any opinion?
Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting, and definitely has a lot of validity to it. I mean, hopefully in the future you might be able to take a blood test and based on your genes determine, okay, this is the perfect microbiome for you, and then see how you could go about because it also has to do with what you eat overall, your general diet and a lot of other things that influence it, not only that you try to increase the amount by adding more microbes.
Right. Well, this has been fascinating. I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope that, are you working on a new paper? Is there anything new coming out soon?
Well, we are working on different things, but one thing is that we're hoping to redo this study, but with more follow-up time.
And also, if you can get more information about the prevalence of type 2 diabetes in these subjects, it would be really fascinating. So,
Yes, no, I agree.
thank you for being here, Dr. Harlid. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. And that's it for today. I don't want people to be all freaked out, but we all know, for lots of reasons that we've talked about on this show over the years, that taking antibiotics willy-nilly, just because you want your doctor to do something for the $40 copay that you're paying, is a bad idea. All right, so that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Please share the show. Always share the show, because you never know who you're going to help. And remember, muscle is metabolic currency. So get into the gym and make a deposit today. I already made my deposit this morning. See you tomorrow.